Tonight, Cyclone Alfred approaches the east coast, threatening to whip up dangerous winds and cause widespread flooding. Good evening and welcome to ABC News Victoria. I'm Iskhander Razak. Also tonight, the teen charged over an airport security breach at Victoria's second airport allegedly falsely claimed he was carrying a bomb. Two brothers sentenced over the unprovoked killing of a beloved son. And Collingwood ready for a rain-soaked round one. Cyclone Alfred is bearing down on Australia's east coast, with the worst of the weather still to come. Alfred is the first tropical cyclone to make a direct hit on Brisbane and the Gold Coast in more than 50 years. The storm is predicted to make first contact with land as a Category 2 system before heading inland. The impact will be felt along a 600-kilometre stretch of the coast from Queensland's Double Island Point to Yamba in New South Wales, bringing intense rainfall, destructive wind gusts and wild seas. 4.5 million people live in the path of the storm. Life-threatening flash flooding is expected before the crossing. More than 80,000 homes are without power tonight, and up to 800 millimetres of rain is possible within the next 3 days. Our reporters are spread throughout New South Wales and Queensland tonight. We begin our coverage with Mark Willisey in Brisbane.
It's a threat not seen here in a generation. Ferocious winds ripping massive trees from their roots on the Gold Coast. The consequences devastating, with homes crushed by falling branches. Tens of thousands are without power and fearing what's still to come.
Not looking forward to tonight because we've got windows all around.
Scott Maxwell was lucky to escape uninjured when a huge tree fell on his Currumbin home.
I woke up at 2 o'clock this morning with a loud thud and the whole house shook.
The savage conditions taking even experienced hands off guard.
I'm used to cyclones. I come from Magnetic Island, North Queensland, so Category 5. I wasn't worried about Category 2. I should have been.
The Gold Coast's famous beaches, unrecognisable. Massive swells are gouging chunks out of the coastline, leaving a jagged wall of sand with a breathtaking drop.
We're all quiet. I think we're all in awe of what's happening right now.
Unbelievable what nature can do.
Structures now left exposed to the elements, and some hinterland roads are starting to go under. This lot will need a shower before they bunker down, potentially for a while.
It's possible that we're going to ask people to shelter for 24 to 36 hours.
One of the nation's most built-up regions is at the mercy of Tropical Cyclone Alfred. The storm's slow progress allowing for final walks and preparations in Brisbane this morning. After an agonising wait, most just want to see the back of it.
But now we're breathing deeply because the pause just adds a little bit more pressure.
We've both not been through anything like this before.
The power is probably the main concern.
City life has ground to a halt. The streets are mostly empty.
Humans rally in times of crisis and people really have.
Potential projectiles have been corralled. Families are ready.
It's like you're waiting for a meal to come to the table and you're just sitting there waiting.
The Cyclone Alfred moves across the Moreton Bay Islands overnight. It's expected to weaken from a Category 2 to a Category 1 system before crossing the mainland tomorrow morning.
This will mean that destructive winds are unlikely for Brisbane itself, but damaging wind gusts to 120 kilometres per hour are expected.
While Alfred's slow pace has given southeast Queensland time to prepare, it comes with a sting in the tail. Authorities say it could take the tropical cyclone anywhere between 6 to 9 hours to cross the coast. In the process, it could dump life-threatening and dangerous flooding rains on low-lying areas. Rainfall totals for the event could reach 800 millimetres in some areas.
In this case, it is really large and slow moving, and that does represent the prospect of some significant rainfall.
Potentially exceed the levels we saw in the 2022 flood. And so if that is not a reason to take this seriously, I don't know what is.
Authorities expect to release water from the region's main dams in the coming days. Islands just off the coast are already being pounded. Kangaroos are fleeing. Hatchlings are off to a turbulent start.
But it's coming now, you can feel it's in the air.
It'll be a sleepless night for many, with more to come as the expected flood disaster unfolds. Mark Willisey, ABC News, Brisbane.
The damage from Cyclone Alfred is already visible on the New South Wales coast. Wild tides and storm surges are eroding some of the state's most popular beaches.
With Cyclone Alfred on their doorstep, communities on the edge of the ocean are securing what they can.
And it's roaring, absolutely roaring. So I've tied it all up, made sure everything was slashed down, and yeah, it should be all right.
This is a serious issue for those communities, particularly low-lying communities close to the coast as well.
High tides and damaging surf are starting to erode Byron Bay's famed beaches.
When those waves have so much energy, that's when they actually need to lose some of their energy, and by that means they actually take that sand away from the beach.
So there has been coastal surges. There are still some considerable high tides that are occurring. A number of the beaches have been affected, but we're still very early in this cyclone hitting the sea.
As water levels rise, animals are also being displaced. This eel was rescued after washing into a gutter in Ballina.
You're a bit lost there, mate.
While a turtle found itself lost on the streets of Benora Point.
I'll help you out, get you back in the water, safe.
Several major flood warnings have been issued for rivers between Port Macquarie and Tweed Heads. Coastal communities like Ballina will be first in line for a battering when Alfred arrives. Sandwiched between rivers and the ocean, the risk that floods could clash with a storm surge means that homes like these are particularly vulnerable. Sam Ryder moved into his home on the Richmond River just 4 weeks ago.
Like, the attitude from most of the people in this area is pretty casual, so we'll see what happens. It could be bad. We've put the sandbags out just to kind of stop the wake and whatnot. Like, you'll never keep water out completely.
Other locals aren't so relaxed.
If that water comes down from Lismore and that surge is still here, good night.
One more restless sleep before the cyclone's long-anticipated arrival. Sean Turritt-Goodwin, ABC News, Ballina.
We've got reporters in the field in Queensland and New South Wales tonight. Let's bring in Laura Lavelle in Brisbane. Laura, have things taken a turn for the worse?
They certainly have, Isk. Over the past few hours, the weather has really ramped up here in Brisbane. The winds are quite strong at the moment, and we know the Gold Coast is currently being pounded by those dangerous wind gusts as well. Residents across the southeast were told to take shelter immediately today and be prepared to stay in their homes for up to 36 hours. Today, more than 50,000 homes lost power. Many are still without, and no doubt over the coming days, as Cyclone Alfred barrels onto the Queensland coast, more will lose power as well. Authorities say over the coming 24 hours, it'll be a difficult time for those in southeast Queensland.
Our reporter Victoria Pengelly is in northern New South Wales. Victoria, how are things looking where you are?
Look, it's been a pretty wet and windy day here in Murwillumbah. The rain has been coming down pretty consistently. Much of the town lost power last night and some phone towers have also gone out, which is an eerie sign of what's to come. There has been some minor flooding in low-lying areas, and the Tweed River is currently sitting at about 3 metres, which is still at minor flooding levels and well below the peak of 6.5 metres seen back in 2022. It is rising pretty quickly though. We were down there a short time ago and were warned by some locals to get to higher ground. The real concern though now is if the rain continues to fall, the water could come over the riverbanks and put hundreds of homes and businesses right in the firing line all over again.
Victoria and Laura, thank you both. Stay safe. Now, with only hours till Tropical Cyclone Alfred makes landfall, there are some severe weather conditions to stay aware of. Here's what to expect over the next few days.
Well, before Cyclone Alfred makes landfall, wind gusts today recorded up to 120 kilometres per hour at Cape Byron. Peak waves off Brisbane climbed to nearly 17 metres yesterday, and more than 400 millimetres of rain has drenched Dorrigo in 48 hours. And the severe weather has been ongoing for most of the week, including more than 48 hours with peak waves exceeding 10 metres off Tweed Heads, and already 3 consecutive days with damaging wind gusts at Byron Bay. Tonight, Alfred is less than 100 kilometres offshore and is forecast to cross the Moreton Bay Islands overnight before reaching the mainland on Saturday. It's during this period when destructive gusts may occur just south of the eye on the coastal fringe, along with the highest threat of erosion when high tide occurs around 4 a.m. The wind and wave threat will gradually ease after landfall. However, for most regions, the worst impacts will arrive under Alfred's deluge of rain, hundreds of millimetres on Saturday alone, focused in on Brisbane, the Gold Coast and the Northern Rivers. And the latest modelling now has torrential falls persisting into Sunday, another 300 millimetres possible near the border, while heavy rain also spreads west and flooding is possible on the New South Wales northern slopes and ranges. The remnants of Alfred will finally shift south and spread heavy rain to Sydney by the time we hit Monday. By then, widespread flooding across both southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales.
And later this hour, a special edition of 7:30 with Sarah Ferguson.
For our cyclone coverage, I'll be joined by the Prime Minister, the Premier of Queensland, David Crisafulli, and our reporters on the ground.
The 17-year-old boy accused of bringing a shotgun onto a Jetstar flight yesterday allegedly said he had bombs in his bags before being tackled to the ground by heroic witnesses. Operations at Avalon Airport just outside Geelong were back to normal today, but questions are mounting about how the extraordinary security breach happened.
This is the incredible moment a teenager was detained on JQ610 to Sydney. The pilot kicking the butt of a shotgun out of his reach after panicked crew and front row passengers realised he wasn't airport staff but an alleged gunman.
Obviously pretty scary and alarming.
I'd like to know how he got as far as he did. Outrageous, and they're unacceptable.
According to court documents, the teenager stole two 12-gauge shotguns and a rifle from Turallo yesterday. The unsupervised learner driver is alleged to have travelled along Beach Road in Avalon before police say he entered a breach in the fence 2 kilometres west of the airport terminal and made his way to the plane. Once on board, saying, "I've got bombs in my bag," police say those bombs were fake.
Certainly our cabin manager asked the right questions as the gentleman hopped on the aircraft because she thought it was unusual.
The airport was off limits into the night. When morning broke, passengers returned. They were met with beefed up security, but it's still unclear why the breach wasn't detected sooner.
I don't want to get into the detail of any of the security issues, but we are confident that Avalon is working to address all these issues.
Australian airports are very safe and secure environments. We process 120 million customer movements a year in and out of our airfields, the big airports as well as our regional gateways.
We allegedly have an individual that can walk across the tarmac and onto a plane armed.
The 17-year-old is now facing a series of charges, including unlawfully taking control of an aircraft. He was remanded in custody today. No bail application was made. His alleged motive just one of a number of unanswered questions as investigations continue. Jesse Thompson, ABC News.
Two brothers who murdered a talented basketballer in Melbourne CBD have been jailed for 25 years, with the judge labelling the killing senseless. Ali Ariak had been celebrating his birthday when he was stabbed to death in what was described as an unprovoked attack.
Heartbreak for a family grieving the loss of a much-loved son.
We lost Alier, which was the icon of my family and most educated one.
Ali Ariak was a promising basketballer from Perth who was embarking on a professional career in the sport.
Everybody wants to be Alier, you know, because he's a basketballer. He was a symbol for the kids.
But Alier never got to fulfil his dream. While out celebrating his birthday with his brother and friends, he was ambushed in an unprovoked attack. Alier died after being stabbed 9 times on Burke Street, and his brother Kuol was also injured. The two men wielding the knives were brothers Aaron Gabra-Georges and Timrat Kassa. Today, a Supreme Court judge sentenced the pair to 25 and 26 years jail, calling the murder senseless.
Actions such as yours shatter the public's confidence to feel safe in open places of enjoyment. A young life was tragically cut short in a brutal display of street violence.
The court heard the brothers never clearly explained their motive. In court, the Killer brothers appeared to be in a daze, and Team Rat Kassa needed to be woken by guards at the end of the hearing. As he was being led away, he stared blankly at the victim's girlfriend, who asked him if he was sorry for what he'd done.
The law has to eliminate those criminals who are carrying a weapon in the street.
Aaliyah is being remembered as hard-working and a loving brother to his siblings, with his mother Elizabeth saying he was a peaceful soul who cared for others. The family say they believe justice has been served, but Aaliyah's death is a tragedy from which they'll never recover. Christian Silva, ABC News, Melbourne.
Cyclone Alfred has scuppered the Prime Minister's plans to call the federal election for April 12. National Affairs correspondent Jane Norman has more.
The Prime Minister was planning to call the election on Sunday for April 12, but with the cyclone yet to make landfall, he's confirmed to the ABC he'll wait. An April election would have enabled the Prime Minister to avoid a budget and the disruption of campaigning through Easter, Anzac Day and school holidays. But it's not to be. Parliament is now set to return on March 25 for the Treasurer's fourth budget, with an election to follow in May.
I have no intention of doing anything that distracts from what we need to do. And what we need to do is to look after each other at this difficult time.
At this point, only one thing's for sure: the election has to be held by May 17.
Urgent investigations have been launched into allegations a labour hire company has been ripping off Melbourne's Metro Tunnel project by charging for fake shifts. The $15 billion Melbourne train line is on track to open later this year. But the government was last night made aware of allegations a labour hire company, MC Labour, was billing for work shifts that did not exist. 2 CFMEU delegates have been sacked in relation to the alleged scam. MC Labour says it's cooperating with authorities.
It is being currently investigated, but I do want to emphasise the contracts that are in place in regards to this contract work mean that taxpayers will not be paying the bill for any of this.
Thousands of hopeful festival goers have been left stranded in Victoria's northwest after a local council made a last-minute decision to deny a music festival a permit. Early arrivals for Esoteric have been left stuck in the regional town of Donald after the festival was cancelled late yesterday. The annual 5-day event draws about 10,000 people. This year, the gates were left locked. Organisers say they had all necessary approvals in place except for a final tick from the council, which was denied due to a safety concern.
It's heartbreaking that it's cancelled. I feel it's ridiculous.
And just like the effort we went through to get here and just the excitement and just to be told at the last minute that it wasn't happening at all was like crushing.
Ukraine's president says he will send negotiators to Saudi Arabia for talks with US officials after the White House suspended crucial military aid. Volodymyr Zelensky has met with EU leaders who have unanimously agreed to boost defence spending to support Kyiv in its fight against Russia. Europe correspondent Zoe Ford reports from Brussels.
A warm welcome in the middle of a funding freeze. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky arrives in Brussels after a gruelling week, thanking European Union leaders for their support.
You made a strong signal to Ukrainian people, to Ukrainian warriors, to civilians, to all our families, and it's great that we are not alone.
The 27 EU countries unanimously backed plans to free up billions of dollars for defence following marathon talks, just days after the United States paused funding and support for Kyiv.
We are coming out of this European Council very determined to ensure Europe's security and to act with the scale, the speed and the resolve that this situation demands.
The Ukrainian president has also confirmed he'll send negotiators to Saudi Arabia next week for talks with US officials. He's vowing to work constructively with the Trump administration.
Ukraine wants to make a deal because I don't think they have a choice. I also think that Russia wants to make a deal because in a different way that only I know, they have no choice either.
26 of the 27 EU leaders at this summit voiced their support for Kyiv, insisting there can be no talks about Ukraine without Ukraine and promising to continue the supply of aid. There wasn't consensus because, as expected, Hungary's Viktor Orban refused to join them. He supports Donald Trump's plan for direct talks with Moscow.
The policy of President Trump in that respect is more than right.
Meanwhile, Russian forces are continuing to advance through Ukraine's Donetsk region, shelling the city of Kramatorsk and claiming they've captured another village. Ukraine putting out fires one battle at a time. Mazoe Ford, ABC News.
Pope Francis has thanked well-wishers in an audio message he recorded in hospital. It's after doctors confirmed his condition has remained stable for a third day.
The message came as a surprise to well-wishers who had gathered for a nightly prayer service for Pope Francis here at St Peter's Square. The message, which was recorded in Spanish by the 88-year-old pontiff earlier in the day, was played to the crowd and was met with applause.
Agradezco de todo corazón las oraciones.
In the message, Pope Francis thanked those that had been praying for his recovery, and he said that he is with them. He also wished blessings upon them. This is the first time that the pontiff's voice has been heard since he entered Rome's Gemelli Hospital 3 weeks ago. He still hasn't been seen in public. In its latest medical update, the Vatican said that his condition has stabilised. That's after he suffered 2 respiratory crises earlier this week. He was initially admitted to hospital with bronchitis, but is now known to be battling pneumonia in both of his lungs. His doctors have told us not to expect daily medical updates, which we've been receiving up until now. That's because his condition has been stable for a number of days and they no longer deem a running commentary of his treatment necessary. Despite these seemingly positive signs, however, the Vatican says that his prognosis is still guarded, which means that they're not confident that he's out of danger yet.
The daughter of Frenchwoman Gisèle Pelicot, whose mass rape case shocked the world last year, has pressed charges against her father. Caroline Darrian filed the legal complaint against Dominique Pelicot months after he was convicted of drugging and raping her mother and inviting dozens of men to do the same. He was sentenced to 20 years in jail. Among the records he kept were pictures of his daughter naked or semi-naked, wearing underwear she has said she does not recognise. Ms Darrian says initial investigations into her mother's case did not sufficiently look into her own allegations. Dominique Pelicot has denied assaulting his daughter. US President Donald Trump has paused nearly all tariffs imposed on Mexico and Canada until next month. The reversal comes just 2 days after Mr Trump imposed a 25% tax on America's 2 closest trading partners. Mexico has welcomed the move, and Canada has postponed some of its tariffs against the US until early April. Mr Trump's tariff plans have rattled Wall Street and alarmed American consumers. Staying on finance, and it was another bruising day for markets which continue to react badly to President Trump's sudden shifts in trade policy. The Australian share market in particular has fallen to a new 6-month low. Here's David Chow.
Well, Donald Trump's policy announcements are kind of like turning on and turning off a light switch. The US president now wants to delay his 25% tariffs on most Mexican goods and some Canadian imports for about a month. And that's on top of yesterday's decision to give car makers a 1-month exemption from those tariffs. But investors are just over it. All that uncertainty and the constant backflipping, that led to the local share market falling by a pretty steep 1.8% today, with tech, banking and healthcare among the worst performing stocks. And when you zoom out, you can see the ASX is now at its lowest level in 6 months. Overseas, things were looking pretty ugly for Wall Street and the FTSE as well, though Chinese markets bucked the trend. Now, you can really see the pessimism on Wall Street's tech index. The Nasdaq is down 10% from its record high, so it's officially a correction. But that's nothing compared to Tesla, which has lost half its value in 3 months. Its EV sales have been falling quite sharply these past few months in Australia, Europe and even California, where its headquarters used to be. Although Elon Musk's tilt towards right-wing politics has cost him billions, don't worry, he's doing all right. Meanwhile, gold is down slightly, oil prices are near a 3-year low, and the Aussie dollar has slipped to 63 US cents. But it's nothing quite as dramatic as Bitcoin. The original cryptocurrency jumped when President Trump signed an executive order to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve. But it quickly fell again when people found out this reserve will be funded exclusively by Bitcoin that US authorities have already seized from criminals. So it seems taxpayers won't be footing the bill. And that's finance.
The 2025 AFL season begins tonight with the Swans hosting the Hawks for opening round. Then on Sunday, Collingwood takes on Greater Western Sydney in the only other match of the cyclone-affected fixture.
Sunny skies at Pies training, a complete contrast to the rain waiting for them in Sydney.
We'd like to think our game style doesn't really matter if it's wet or dry.
Braden Maynard will make the trip. The defender has put a foot injury behind him. He's a crucial part of the backline, which will also feature all-Australian midfielder Josh Dacos.
The game now requires you to hit targets out of D50, otherwise you're in trouble. And to have Josh and then futuristically have Dan Houston, there'll be a couple of weapons.
Ready for whatever the forecast throws, the Pies will take a full squad to Sydney. Tim Membry is set to make his club debut in the forward line, and Harry Perriman will line up in the midfield.
He's such a good transitional runner, and just over the pre-season prepping for that, knowing he can go back and play those defensive roles for us.
And a reunion awaits Perriman when he faces the team he left last season.
I'm sure he'll be focused on his role and his job within the Collingwood team, and our boys will be focused. I'm sure there'll be a few hugs after the game, though.
Far from a surprise, the Giants are likely to hand Toby Bedford a role on Nick Dacos.
He's certainly one that we'll look very closely at, and Toby's the obvious one to go to him.
Joining the club in 2023, James Leake will make his debut. The 19-year-old battled a quad injury for most of last year, but has been rewarded for a strong summer.
Leakey, your debut.
The forward line will be without injured duo Jesse Hogan and Jake Stringer. It leaves Aaron Cadman as the Giants' spearhead. 30 goals from 23 games last year. It's his time to stand up. Alexia Pesce, ABC News.
Back to the weather, and it was 2 to 5 degrees warmer than average last night. The overnight low of 7 was at Mount Hotham and Omeo. The highest overnight minimum was 20 degrees at Gabo Island. Today there was some fog and low cloud about the eastern and central ranges in the morning, but when that cleared it was a mostly sunny day. Maximum temperatures were generally 3 to 7 degrees warmer than usual. The state's high of 36 was in Mildura. In Melbourne it reached a top of 29 degrees today just after 3:15. Right now outside it is 26 degrees. Across the country, mostly sunny in Canberra, Perth and Adelaide, showers in Darwin and Sydney, wind and rain in Brisbane and cloudy in Hobart. Tropical cyclone Alfred is generating thick cloud 120 to 150 kilometres off the coast of Queensland. A high in the bite is driving scattered moist onshore flow with low cloud along the coast of New South Wales. The rest of the country is largely cloud-free. A high pressure system lies to the southeast of Victoria. A low pressure trough is forecast to approach Western Victoria on Sunday as the remnants of Tropical Cyclone Alfred linger in eastern New South Wales. Tropical Cyclone Alfred is also likely to cross the coast, generating torrential rain, damaging winds and hazardous surf over southeast Queensland and northeast New South Wales. Tomorrow, mostly sunny in Perth, Canberra, Hobart and Adelaide. Continued wind and rain in Brisbane and a chance of rain in Darwin. In Victoria's west tomorrow, Warrnambool will feel a low of 14 and reach 31. The fire danger will be high in the northwestern, central and northeastern districts. Patchy morning fog about the ranges and inland Gippsland. A dry, warm to hot and mostly sunny day with light to moderate northeasterly winds and afternoon coastal sea breezes. Speaking of the bays, east to southeasterly winds of up to 15 knots, tending north to northeasterly early in the morning, then tending east to southeasterly in the middle of the day, waves around 1 metre. A strong wind warning has been issued for the South Gippsland coast and a severe heatwave warning for southwestern districts for the next 3 days. Sunny tomorrow in Melbourne with a low of 17 and a max of 32. To be windy in the morning, reaching up to 30 kilometres per hour before easing in the afternoon. The UV index is predicted to reach 8 after 10 a.m. Use sun protection. For the rest of the week, Sunday mostly sunny, Monday partly cloudy and 33, Tuesday sunny, Wednesday partly cloudy and Thursday mostly sunny, Friday a shower or 2. That's it for this evening's bulletin, but I hope you'll join me again tomorrow night. But before that, in a few minutes. Up next is Sarah Ferguson with a special broadcast of 7:30, and after that, for continuing coverage of Cyclone, watch News Channel. Good night.